Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. I'm going to start off with Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney had an interesting quote. She said, if we really want to keep our kids safe, we need to spend less time banning books and more time stopping the horrific gun violence in our schools. And you go, yeah, we need to spend more time, figuring out how we stop this craziness. Less time worrying about the books. This is the part that gets me. We want to arm the teachers. I hear this all over the last day. We need to arm the teachers. More guns in the schools. More teachers with guns. But we're not going to let them decide what books kids read. It's twisted. The president came out and said that he's done everything he can do. He's done everything he can do through executive order. It's Congress's job to act. He said, I have gone the full extent of my executive authority to do on my own anything on guns, about guns. Congress has to act. The majority of American people think having an assault weapon is bizarre, a crazy idea. They're against that. He added, I can't do anything except plead with Congress to act reasonably. Now, this is important. The president's going, look, my hands are up in the air. There's nothing I can do without you, Congress, to do something. Now, you've got this Republican representative from Tennessee, right in the area where this shooting happened. His name's Tim Burchett. Burchett came out and said, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible, horrible situation, he said. And we're not going to fix it. Criminals are going to be criminals. And it's this kind of just throw your hands up in the air, go, can't stop it. Hopes and thoughts and prayers. Can't stop it. Nothing we can do about it. We're not going to fix it. How did we go from, my generation, we're not going to take it as the anthem to, well, we're not going to fix it. Nothing we can do about it. And the thing is they want us to believe that we're helpless. They want us to believe that the only defense is more guns, more sales of guns, more people carrying guns, more tragedy, more disaster capitalism. And the thing that I found interesting when he was asked, how is he keeping his children safe? His own daughter. What are you doing? What are you doing with your kids, Representative? He said, well, we've opted to homeschool. And for me, there was this moment, this kind of light bulb moment. And I've said this in the past. These shootings benefit Republicans. It's like they want them because they benefit, because it's good for their agenda. Because they're really never going to fix anything. They're never going to solve the problem. They're good at pointing it out. They're good at blaming everybody for everything, but they never have a solution to fix it. And look, this plays right into their hands. Because I've been saying for a while, all of the attacks that we see on public education, all of it, from the book banning to, the parents go, we want to know what every second of every day, all of this stuff that they've thrown out, the funding, the decades of defunding, the decades of pushing all of these choice schemes that never come up with any choice. And I finally have come to the reality, and I think we as a country have to come to the reality that that Republicans are okay with these shootings because it's good for their agenda, which is to destroy public schools. It's to end public schools. Because what happens? What happens? The message is, you should start homeschooling, start pulling your kids out. Now understand, this was a private school where the shooting in Nashville happened. You don't hear a lot about that. But here we are in this moment. Republicans have done nothing. Democrats keep coming out with plans. We can argue whether they're good, bad, indifferent, but they keep coming up with, hey, this is how we can move in this direction. What I find interesting, Tennessee, where this shooting happened most recently, starting on April 1st, you can bring a loaded gun with you to brunch, but dress up like Dolly Parton? If a man were to dress up like Dolly Parton and sing Jolene, that's going to be a misdemeanor. Someone's going to jail. It's kind of twisted, don't you think? Packing the heat. And the thing that gets me is in the coverage of this most recent one is just mind-blowing to me. Because again, we're talking the solutions from the right are we need guns in school. We're gonna arm those teachers. We're gonna have police officers in every hallway. We're gonna set up big sandbags out front with 50 caliber machine guns to barricade our schools. Because that's what they want. This is what the ammosexuals are dreaming. This is what they want. And I think, as Jon Stewart said, at what point, because we're saturated with guns, at what point do we then become safe? At what point do 3 9-year-olds not get slaughtered? And I was reading an interesting piece over at the Washington Post that are talking about these AR-15 rounds, these high-velocity rounds that, as they said, come in a barrage of 30 or even 100 in rapid succession. They said it can eviscerate multiple people in seconds. A single bullet lands with a shock wave intense enough to blow apart a skull and demolish vital organs. The impact is even more acute on compact bodies of small children. And the basic takeaway from this is maybe we're at a moment where the carnage of these weapons needs to be shown in public. Maybe we need to start posting, what's happened to these children on billboards, because I don't think we quite get it. But I hear it's not the guns. No, it's not the guns. We've always had people who are going to do bad things. We've always had it. In fact, the good representative who's now homeschooling their kids saying, well, nothing we can do about it. We're not going to fix it. Don't look to us. Don't look to us, because we have no solutions. Is this what has to happen? Now, these weapons, again, I agree. There are bad people who want to do bad things. Always have been. When I was a kid, there were tons of them. These weapons help. And, the tool here is maybe start looking at how we allow someone with a mental health history of this shooter to go and purchase 5 weapons with, take more, have some more, get a 6th, they're fun. And no questions. Now, as I've said in the past, I'm not a gun grabber. In fact, I've got one within arm's reach. But I think you should have sane, rational regulations. There should be red flag laws where someone who is struggling with mental health issues, we should be looking into. They shouldn't be easy to get, just out of a parking lot at a Walmart. Also, I find it interesting. Many news outlets, I refuse to say the name of any of these shooters, any of these murderers. I will not utter their name. I will not talk about them personally. I do find it interesting. How the New York Post not only posted a picture, but the person's name. All the media outlets slapping the picture on. And you got to go, why? What is it about this shooting that the New York Post and other media outlets would violate their own policy? What is it about this one to not show the murderer and name them? What is it about this moment? Well, there's the transgender issue here. And again, this plays into the right's narrative. It's those over there. And the thing that I haven't heard anyone say, because this person was born a female and was transitioning into a male, going, congratulations, this person is now male, doing what males do. Can you tell I'm angry and frustrated in the moment by a congressman saying there's nothing we can do? Yeah, is what it is. Bunker down. Do you accept that? And this is where my mind goes. Do we as a society accept there's nothing we can do? Because some people don't want to be inconvenienced. My kids have to be at risk every day. 3 9-year-olds are never going to see 10. Because, well, we don't want to do paperwork. We don't want to do background checks. We don't want to do, mental health checks. We don't want to do any of that. So we don't want red flag laws. We don't want to inconvenience anyone's fetish to the firearms. And what's interesting is you have the congressman, Representative Oogles there, whose Christmas card with his whole family, like true ammosexuals, posing with their ARs and their weapons. Who does that? A firearm is a tool. And it's a tool for what? It's a tool to murder. Whether you're killing animals for consumption or you're killing people. That's what it was made for. It is a tool. And my Republican friends are saying, sorry, we're going to give this tool to everyone. Even people who are going to do horrible things. And then we're just going to throw up our hands and say, wish we... Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. Want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Do you think there's something we can do, or is it? Or are we just helpless? Is this a hopeless moment? That we should just, in despair, wait for the next time and the next time? Or should we turn our schools and our playgrounds into armed camps? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, I go back to this, and the reality is they're not going to fix it. Just like they're not going to fix public education. This is another in the things that they're telling us outwardly. They don't have a plan. There are no solutions. Again, the Republican Party, all they have is division. All they have is tearing us apart. And that's the sad thing. I want a functional Republican Party. I want people to come to the table with actual ideas and not just, nothing we can do about it. And I look now at all of these so-called parental rights bills. I'm sure you've seen them. A single parent can go into the school library and challenge any book because, well, the book says he or she. Because we're against pronouns, evidently now. I was thinking about it. You think about the power that this one parent has to go in and shut down education. They call it parental rights bills. But how many rights of other parents is this one person usurping? And it's the same thing that, you look down in Georgia, what they did with voting rights. You had one person challenge, 50,000 people's right to vote. And probably 99% of them were wrong. But they did it because they could, because they wanted to gum up the system and slow it down. And again, destroy the system. It's about tearing at the machine. It's not that they could care less about your kids or mine. They've proven this. But it's about gumming up the system. It's about destroying what they ideologically despise, which is anything we the people hold. Anything we, the working class, anything we, the citizens of this country, hold and control and operate. Has to be privatized, has to be profitized, has to be in the hands of the elite. While they're saying, public education's in the hands of the elite. No, it's not. Sorry. We vote for our school boards. They have to stand before us and say, hey, this is what we're doing. We can go to meetings and we can, look, they did it. They sent crazy people to disrupt meetings and cause all kinds of chaos under the guise of parental rights, and you find out that half the people that went to those meetings weren't even parents of that school, because it was all about the display. It was all about the message. It was all about the narrative. That, we're fighting for your parental rights. Don't you want us to make sure your kid never sees that naked statue of David that's been around for, 520 years? Because now it's not just a naked guy with a giant right hand, message being doing the work of God. No, it's pornographic. Because one person, there were 3 complaints. 2 people said, we would like to have been notified. 1 person complained. And it is now national nonsense. One official in Wisconsin, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, says, you know what? I don't like Rainbow Land. It could be perceived as something bad because it says rainbow. And everyone knows what rainbow means, right? No ideas on how to make lives better. And this is them telling us that they've got no way to help the working class do better, our kids to get better educations, workers to get better jobs. They've got no ideas. There's nothing. They're void of ideas. But what they are is they're bomb throwers. These are people who won popularity contests by being outrageous, by saying how much they hate government, and we're going to show you how much we hate government by not doing a thing. Now, I looked at New Mexico. Their governor, Michelle Grissom, signed a new piece of legislation today ensuring that every child has free and healthy school meals. Everyone. Breakfast and lunch for every New Mexico school. Fresh ingredients from local farmers and local growers. See, this is thinking. This is a policy. We're going to make sure that our kids get fed, because we know that when kids have full bellies, their minds work a little bit better. And also the local community needs customers. So this is a way to go, hey, local agriculture, we got a market for you. We're going to take some of your product, and it's going to be a great win-win situation. Now, Minnesota most recently became the 4th state in the country to provide universal school lunches and breakfast. I shouldn't say lunches. It's breakfast and lunch, so it's both. New Mexico is now the 5th. Could this be something that happens across the country? Hope so. Smart policy, good policy. Going to help kids. Going to help kids learn. Going to provide a better environment. It's good stuff. Here's the thing that gets me. The amount of money that it would take to feed every one of these children, a mere pittance compared to what my gun friends want to put a gun in every teacher's hand. Where's that money going to come from? Oh, well, we got money for guns, right? But not for butter? There used to be a socialist president. There was a good socialist president. What was his name? Good Republican socialist president. Dwight David Eisenhower was his name. Gave a speech about guns and butter. When we stop making sure that our kids are taken care of, that are the baseline fed, There's something wrong with us while proposing more guns. Now, I understand there's a bill in Congress that could do this nationwide, ensure that school meal programs are universal. It's these Universal School Meals Act, free breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack to all kids. And now this is one of those things where, having myself grown up in a very poor area where, in the summertime, you could get a hot lunch, and again, wasn't much. And Reagan came in and destroyed it. That message for me very young. Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do, and especially poor people. Look at the policies. Again, and I'm not just beating up on Republicans. I know Republican politicians from the past. I know a lot of Republican voters. When you talk to them individually, we're all of the same kind of mindset. I've yet to face meet a Republican voter who's going to tell me flat out, no, we're not going to feed the children. It's when you get this groupthink that it then becomes something that has to fall by the wayside. This is where I keep coming back to. I don't know the 3 staffers who were murdered in Nashville. I don't know whether they were Democrats, Republicans, independents. I don't know their immigration status. I don't know whether they're white, black. I don't know anything about them. I know they shouldn't have been murdered. I don't know anything about the 3 children. I don't know anything about those 3 9-year-olds. But I know they're not going to see 10. And I know their families are heartbroken. And that will never heal. And again, to have someone tell us right out, say, hey, sorry. We're not going to fix it. It's not going to happen. Because the right of, again, read the sentence, the right of the people shall not be infringed. And again, we can argue day and night about the well-regulated militia. We can argue day and night about, the Second Amendment and what its intent was really, really about. But we're in a moment where I don't believe the Founding Fathers really ever could have conceived of the kind of weaponry in the hands of people that can do such horrible things. Now, again, I'm not a gun grabber. I'm not. As I've said, I've got one not more than arm's reach away. But there are sane, rational things we can do and should be doing. And when you have someone like Liz Cheney coming out and saying, you know what, we've got to do something. And look, I'm no fan of Liz Cheney's. But when even she's going, banning books isn't keeping our kids safe. It's time we spend less time banning books and more time stopping these horrific, horrible murders. Is that something we can come together on? Is that something we can take the red hats and the blue hats off and say, you know what? Don't care about the politics. Want to make sure my kid comes home? Want to make sure your kid comes home? Because here's the sad reality. What we know is out of these 6 people having their lives stolen from them, gun sales are going to go up. The gun manufacturers are going to make more money. The gun dealers are going to make more money. And the Republican Party is going to get stronger because this helps their agenda. There's something wrong with that, don't you think? Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day the 3 Mile Island Unit 2 reactor partially melted down near Middletown, Pennsylvania. A combination of equipment failure and human error has long been attributed as the cause of the meltdown. An initial overheating and reactor shutdown had occurred, but a pressure valve remained stuck open, allowing coolant to escape. Design flaws in control equipment failed to indicate the position of the valve. Workers then mistook the increased pressure as a result of the excess coolant. They shut off the emergency water system that could have cooled the core. Fears of radiation release and hydrogen bubbles led to voluntary evacuations that included over 140,000 residents. Authorities assured the public that the partial meltdown had been contained. President Carter convened a commission to investigate the causes. It concluded that while the operators took inappropriate actions, the training they received was inadequate, as were the procedures they were required to follow. Plant designers Babcock and Wilcox were held responsible for poor design. The company failed to notify operators of repeated valve failure and a previous near duplicate of the potential catastrophe at the Davis-Besse plant. Metropolitan Edison, General Public Utilities, and the NRC were also held responsible for poor quality control, poor maintenance, communication lapses, and poor training. Fears regarding public health and safety intensified, fueling health studies of those exposed and the anti-nuclear power movement. The aftermath brought about sweeping changes involving emergency response planning, reactor operator training, human factors, engineering, radiation protection, and many other areas of nuclear plant power operations. It also caused the NRC to tighten and heighten its regulatory oversight. All of these changes significantly enhanced U.S. reactor safety. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
It's always useful in a moment of national urgency to have level-headed experts explain what's happening. Experts like extremist right-wing politicos. For example, when 2 high-flying banks crashed this month, these screechers flocked to blame it all on their latest ideological bugaboo, wokeness. Their loopy contention is that everything bad in our country is happening because such institutions as schools, libraries, corporations, and even banks are responding to America's long history of systemic inequality by pursuing politically correct policies, promoting liberal values like fairness, equality, and diversity. Hello, oppression of the many by the few is in fact a reality in America. 2, pursuit of those liberal values is what makes America historically important. And banks? You're seriously asserting that high finance is now motivated by a liberal share-the-wealth mentality? Yes, indeed, squawk these self-proclaimed knowledgeable ones, singling out the recently failed Silicon Valley Bank. They were among the most woke banks, moaned a GOP lawmaker who specializes in conspiracy theories. Governor Ron DeSantis piled on, barking that this bank, they're so concerned with diversity and all kinds of stuff. Then Donald Trump offered his usual deep assessment, lecturing that the collapse is, quote, what happens when you push leftist woke ideology. Bovine excrement. As has now been documented, these banks were not woke, but greedy, incompetent, and reckless. Worse, our bank regulators had been intentionally put to sleep by a 2018 law that specifically let such banks escape careful public supervision. Guess what? Trump was the one who initiated this disastrous regulatory exemption. Ron DeSantis cheered and voted for it, and the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank led the lobbying campaign to ram it into law. This is Jim Hightower saying these politicos and profiteers crashed the bank, and now they're trying to put us to sleep with their hokey anti-woke PR stunt.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, yes, needs a headline. He is going to go to the Senate floor on Wednesday and seek unanimous consent on his bill to ban TikTok from the United States. No more TikTok. And here's the thing, and as I said yesterday, I'm kind of tired of the attacks on TikTok because they're not the only one. In fact, of the top 5 apps in this country, 4 of them are Chinese. Why is it only TikTok? Seems very curious to me. I mean, we've got direct seller apps from China to U.S. consumers that go past taxation, that go past all kinds of stuff, and I don't hear anything about that. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the situation going on between us and the People's Republic there in China. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come share some thoughts. He's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be with you as always.
So what do you make of Hawley? You know, I know this is a grandstand moment. I watched the hearing. Everybody was attacking the TikTok CEO, and rightfully so. But I got to tell you, it seems a little, I don't know, seems a little overblown.
Yeah. Well, in the grand scheme of issues that we have in the U.S. China relationship catalog, I guess, for me, this is far down the list. I mean, it's important for a set of issues, so I don't want to trivialize it because, you do have concerns about who can see and control the data, right? You have concerns about the content and the fact that TikTok has found ways to, let's say, censor content that Beijing might not like, and then they take it back. But that's kind of like the default position.
Right.
In addition to just the broader concerns about social media that you can apply to any of these companies, whether
Absolutely.
it's Meta or what have you. Believe me, I have two 15-year-olds, and so I'm pretty terrified of a lot of social media and the impact that it can have on kids. So there's a whole lot of reasons to be concerned for sure, but that shouldn't be the only thing that sucks up all the oxygen in the room with concerns about China, because we have other concerns that are, in a lot of ways, life and death, or about economic security, or about whether or not we're going to have a conflict, an armed conflict with China. And TikTok's not going to set that off. A lot of these other issues could. And but politicians are going to do what they're going to do, and TikTok's sexy and it has 150 million subscribers, and there is that built-in thing where there is a lot of U.S. competition, and so if they want to do it, if they want to ban it, let's get it over with. But that can't be the last thing that they do on U.S.-China relations, because otherwise it'll just be for naught. And then just the last thing I'll say, Rick, is the way. Obviously, TikTok's not a manufacturer, and so it's not a direct concern for like our stakeholders. But there is this issue of reciprocity, right? And so TikTok has this unlimited access to the U.S. market, basically, and our digital media companies do not. Either
Right.
they're censored, or they have restrictions placed on them, or they don't have any access to it in the case of like YouTube and a couple of the others. So I, you know, so to me, I mean, do we want to censor like Beijing does? No, but we should at least, you know, insist on some reciprocity.
No,
Here.
no.
That
The
seems
reason
to
I
be
bring it up to you, Scott, is not because you're an expert on TikTok, but because
not.
four of the top five apps
Yes.
that are being downloaded in the U.S. are Chinese based. Two of them, this Temu, that I keep seeing on my feed all the time because you mentioned it the last time, and I think my computer heard it, so it's just constantly hitting me. And
I'm sorry.
And
I'm
this,
sorry
I guess
that I
Shein,
screwed up your algorithm, man. I'm sorry.
and the Sheen app. Again, these are direct to consumer from China. Kind of production things. How come I'm not hearing about that?
Well,
I was
Rick, you can get
concerned
some-
about all of it.
You can get like some $10 denim booty shorts on Shein if you're looking for them, by the way. So I don't know if they've marketed your way, but
Yeah.
yeah. In all seriousness, I mean, the reason why Temu and Shein are incredibly important are that, again, this is about reciprocity, access, and an unfair advantage. Temu sells stuff direct to American consumers at really impossibly low prices. I mean, I saw like a piece of hardware on there that cost like $1.50 or something like that, that there's no way you could even find the materials for that, right? To do it for $1.50. It's like impossible. And the same with the garments on Shein. And the reason why they do this, first of all, is that there's some sketchy supply chains in China. We know that. Either they involve forced labor or exploited labor. A lot of the stuff is pirated, number two. And then third, the way that they're selling in the United States is to take advantage of this loophole called de minimis, which is Latin basically for bupkis, or it doesn't amount to anything, or it's so small, so trivial, it doesn't matter. And de minimis is an exception we have in our customs law for people who travel overseas and are bringing back some stuff from overseas, so they don't have to pay tariffs on it, basically. But it's limited. It's like $800 or something like that. But, and here's the thing, a whole bunch of companies figured out a loophole when it got opened up, that they can sell goods directly to American consumers. They can avoid tariffs which sometimes are 25%, sometimes more than that, sometimes a little less than that. And they avoid customs inspection, which means they don't have to meet the forced labor requirements necessarily, or there's no way to enforce them, I should say. And so it gives these companies an unfair advantage against all of our online retailers who are doing business in the United States and our bricks and mortar stores as well. And you can decide if you want to buy imports or not. But if you're going to buy them, they ought to at least go through the process where there's tariffs applied and where they're inspected for things like forced labor or coming from Xinjiang, the Uyghur region.
Or look, if they're going to kill you, they're made with lead, or the melamine in the baby food, or all the all of the things that we've seen time and time again. There's a problem here, and again, we can spend all day on TikTok and the disaster that it is for our democracy and all of that stuff. But the reality is the focus has all been there, and I guess when we looked at them focusing on Twitter and Facebook in the past, nothing got done.
Yeah.
And I don't expect anything to get done other than the dog and pony show when there are real problems. And I thought it was important to bring that up because I don't think most people think about it.
And one last thing about that, because I mean, unless you're in manufacturing or in one of the communities that has a factory, you probably didn't experience the China shock very much, right? That a lot of these industrial communities did. And they came in with these state-owned enterprises. They wiped out the competition. Imports flooded in. A lot of our factories closed down. It devastated a lot of folks, but it didn't get nearly as much media attention. So what's happening now is that these digital sellers are doing the same thing. They're coming in. They have this unfair advantage. They're taking a lot of market share from these other retailers, and they're doing it in a way that's really unfair. And of course, consumers are like, if they, unless they have some ethical principles that are applying to this, they're like, this is great. Yeah. I can get this, this T-shirt for like $5. It comes this is awesome. What's not to like about it? But the problem is at the back end of this, there are a lot of consequences. There are economic consequences. It's about equity, and then the exploitation that's happening in China to make it all possible.
And what's interesting to me is there was a study there was a report over at the AP that I found interesting. It was titled "Amid Strained U.S. ties, China finds unlikely friend in Utah," and it's this story about how the Chinese are really drilling down to the local level and basically buying off local politicians. And I shouldn't say that. That's unfair. They're greasing the palms and schmoozing and bringing local jobs and stuff to where they're building relationships that now, since we're seeing this talk of national divorce, the Chinese are going to come trying to horn in. Are you surprised? I don't think so.
No. And I mean, look, this is something that adversaries have done over the course of our history in the United States. So it's certainly not a new tactic, and frankly, it's not very sophisticated, right? I mean, it's pretty, it's pretty much true to form. And this started, and there's a couple variations of this. First, it was these things called the Confucius Institutes, which were on university campuses, which were funded by, basically friends of the CCP. And, theoretically, they were designed to enhance U.S.-China relationships and the understanding of China. In reality, they were set up to be a mouthpiece for the CCP, to stifle the speech of dissent, and to say to universities, if you're going to allow this to happen, we're going to pull the money from you for all these programs that we've endowed. And so, a lot of these Confucius Institutes disappeared when the strings were attached and these were exposed. Well, a lot of this, there's this other group called the United Front, which is part of what was operating in Utah. And again, the United Front utilizes both Chinese nationals or others who are friendly to the CCP to conduct this at the civic, at the business, at that kind of level. And you can see, and that news story about Utah was a good example about how if you're naive, that you're going to get suckered into this stuff. And they're essentially foreign agents of a competitor and an adversary. And so it is problematic. It has to be exposed. And this is far, far away from all that McCarthyism BS. And just because someone is a Chinese national doesn't mean that they're involved with this. I want to be very clear about that. But we should insist that United Front and folks related to them are identified so that folks know what is happening here. That it's not just goodwill that is being sought.
And this is where I want elected leaders to be a lot more thoughtful than, oh, we're just going to ban TikTok and it's going to solve all our problems. Because that appears to me to be the rhetoric that we're coming away with. Well, we just ban TikTok, everything will be great. No, it's much, much deeper than all of that. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website if you want to check out the incredible work they do. I do want to ask you about the president kicked off Investing in America tour today in North Carolina. I do find it interesting that he came out and said, look, Republican policies would surrender the tech economy to China. It seems like, and look, I don't disagree with him wanting to defund some of the plans and some of the policies that they're pursuing. Is this a good thing, you think?
Yeah, I am someone, and I know we've talked about this before, that what happens particularly with Democrats, because they tend to talk about issues rather than values too much, is that, oh, we have this policy and we did this and we did this infrastructure, we did this clean energy manufacturing, we did the semiconductor stuff. Let's check the box and let's move on to the next thing. And the reality is most people, unless they're really plugged in, aren't even aware that any of this is happening or what it means to their future or to their communities. And so to have, at the cabinet level and at the leadership level, at the presidential level, Joe Biden and the cabinet out there saying, look, this is the results of all of this. You're getting a 5,000 person factory that's being built here. That's going to keep this place prosperous for a generation. Or this is we're connecting broadband so that your kids are going to have more opportunities. And to be very specific about the types of investments that are being made and what the outcomes are going to be for people, and also what the consequences would be if these were wiped off the books, I think is critically important. Because so far, and look, we're just getting into this, really. We're only a year and a half, not even a year and a half into infrastructure, and about not even a year into chips or the clean energy manufacturing. And you've already seen more than $400 billion of private sector investment that's come about as a result of these federal policies. And so what a great return on investment in that. Way better than any of these tax cuts that just lead to stock buybacks and other stuff like that. I mean, this is spades in the ground. These are construction jobs. These are going to be manufacturing jobs. It can be capabilities so we don't run into the supply bottlenecks that we saw before on semiconductors. And it's going to bring more people clean water and high-speed internet and all sorts of goodness. And so I'm glad, but they can't do this enough, right. I think. I mean, hopefully, yeah, they need to do this from now until, they run out of breath, basically, because, otherwise, people are going to be focused, again, on the things like the TikTok or the Trump controversy of the day. But just working this, I think, is going to be very, very important to the success, not only of the policies, but to keep these going. And Rick, you're right, to talk about the threats. If this goes away, if restrictions are put on the funding or whatever, you're really ceding the ground to China. Huge mistake.
No, and I've had a couple people email me, a couple of Trump supporters, full disclosure, who are saying that this is starting the next war. That because we're defending our manufacturing, because we're wanting to reshore manufacturing, that we're actually agitating China to start the next world war. Because you saw the Wall Street Journal said chip makers have to choose between the U.S. and China, because we're going, look, we're reshoring this stuff. We're going to start making our own. And so let me put it that way. Do you think that this is heightening tensions that could lead down that path? And if it is something that potentially could, shouldn't we be doing it faster?
Yeah. So I completely disagree. that this inevitably brings the U.S. and China closer to conflict. I think capitulation brings us closer to conflict, because if they see a U.S. that doesn't have the capabilities, or that doesn't have the resolve, they're much more likely, and by them I mean the Chinese Communist Party and the military, to do things that are going to be even worse than building islands in the South China Sea. And that's stuff that we don't want to see. But if they know we're going to be stronger, we're going to be more capable, and we have resolve, they're far less likely to do stupid things. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, but I think it makes it far less likely. And when has capitulation worked?
Exactly.
That's what I want to know. I mean, you can give me their names afterwards. Be happy to have a conversation with them, because if you open up any chapter of history in the world, capitulation has literally never worked. So, if handing the keys to our economy or the technology race, that is a really dumb idea.
I'm right there with you. Scott, I appreciate the time. As always, good stuff. Hope folks will check out the website, AmericanManufacturing.org. Scott Paul, thanks so much for taking time for us.
You bet, Rick. Keep up the great work. Great to be with you.
Our good friend Scott Paul. Again, check out the website, AmericanManufacturing.org. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1977. That was the day that members of AFSCME Local 1644 began their unsuccessful strike in Atlanta, Georgia. The union was made up of 1,300 mostly black sanitation workers. The city of Atlanta had elected its first black mayor, Maynard Jackson, in 1973. According to historian Manning Marabell, members of the sanitation union had campaigned aggressively to help Jackson become mayor. Many thought he would be sympathetic to the needs of working people in the city. The sanitation workers' hopes were disappointed when they received no raises for 3 consecutive years. Their average income was $7,500 annually. This put the workers below the city's poverty line. Since the Memphis sanitation workers' strike of 1968, AFSCME had emphasized organizing black workers in southern cities. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated while he was in Memphis supporting the strikers. As the nation mourned the death of the civil rights leader, the Memphis strikers had won their first contract. But the sanitation workers in Atlanta would not win their work action. On April 2nd, Mayor Jackson fired the striking workers. He aligned himself with what Manning Marabell has described as Atlanta's corporations, media, and the leaders of the Black Party's bourgeoisie. Some black leaders publicly criticized the workers for striking against the city's first black mayor, accusing them of undermining hard-won black political power. The city's black middle class, by and large, did not support the strike. After a month, the strike was effectively over. Workers returned to their jobs with no improvements in their wages, hours, or conditions. And the hard-learned lesson that what politicians say at election time is not always what they do once they get elected. Like what you hear? Check out laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So, evidently, Chipotle in Portland, Maine, they have agreed to pay $240,000 in, they're calling it a settlement. It's more like back wages. During a unionization drive, they illegally shut down the location where the people tried to organize. And this, again, shows just how weak our laws are, because this is a big thing. Right now, it's a big deal that a company shut down a location that was unionizing, and there's actually a penalty going to happen. Generally doesn't happen that way. To show you how weak our laws have gotten and why we do need major comprehensive labor law reform. But the NLRB ruled that it was illegal for them to shut down. And this is where, the penalties should be really stiff. Just $240,000, the back wages for the time, pennies to a company like Chipotle. And they admitted this. They said that, the company doesn't, we don't agree with what any of the decisions, because of course they're never going to. But they're going to settle because it would be cheaper. It's burdensome and it's expensive to fight these kind of things. So we'll just pay the pittance. Post the notice, the dreaded notice that we won't do it again until the next time. And, everybody will be happy. And I'm like, the penalties should be much worse than this. And had we passed something as weak as the Employee Free Choice Act back during the George W. Bush years and into the Obama years, had we done that, that $240,000 would have been tripled, because they sought to triple the penalties. Now, does that make it a little more painful? I don't think so for a company as large as Chipotle. But here we are. And as I understand, Chipotle still has 10 more other unfair labor practices that are going on as we speak. So, a couple of pennies here, a couple of pennies there. But you know what they don't have? They don't have workers with representation. And this is what corporate America is used to. They're used to having the power. And if they have to pay a little bit, they get to write it off. It cost of doing business. At some point, there need to be real penalties. And this is one of those moments, I think, that, while it's great that they're going to get their back pay for the time that they missed, it's not enough. Just my thoughts. I got an email from John, and I want to make sure I get to this. John, a brother Teamster from Indiana, wrote, my Teamster local here in Indiana just had a contract proposal meeting, local 364 in northern Indiana. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We are a City of Goshen public employees. Great turnout, and we're going after the city for 17.5% increase. We've taken 3.5% the last 3 years, took nothing during COVID. We know we won't get that, but police, fire, and the central garbage have all gotten at least that. John writes, I work for the city street department. We stand in the road every day risking our lives. He says Indiana is a terribly Republican-run state, and they can dissolve the union at any time. But we got to strike while the iron is hot. I would appreciate if you read this on air. It's all or nothing now because the power of the Teamsters in a right-to-work state. Thanks for all you do for the union class, John. And this is the kind of stuff that you get in no rights at work states, like Indiana. This is stuff that you see in places like Florida, where they want to be able to dissolve a union whenever it falls below 50%, because, hey, if the employer can go, hey, you get all those benefits for free, why would you pay the union? You get the freeload off of your brothers and sisters there. You can easily divide up the workforce. You're getting the milk for free. Why would you buy the cow? That kind of mentality. It is Indiana, right? And I hear guys like John going, look, right now is the time. We've not gotten the respect and the dignity that we earn. We are not making the wages that we earn. We're putting our lives on the line to provide a service for the public. We've earned the right to have a living wage and the right to support our families. And it's not just John in Goshen. It's every worker in this country. And the sooner we can all stand together and stand up and fight back and demand better, the better off I think we're all going to be. John, my brother Teamsters out there in Indiana, Teamsters Local 364. Best of luck, brothers and sisters. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick break, right back, stick around.
The tornadoes came at the most dangerous time possible, during the darkness of night.
Massive tornado system bulldozes path of destruction across Mississippi. Floods from historic California storms inundate farmland and impact food prices. Plus, renewable energy has hit a new global record.
All of those broken records and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
What
a glorious day we had here in New York City. It was 60 degrees. Climate change has its perks.
Oops, this is your Green News Report.
Yes, we're all going to die, but sweater weather.
Okay, Tessie Doyen, well, this was one hell of a way to begin the tornado season this year.
Yes, sadly, a daunting recovery is ahead for Mississippi and Alabama after a series of powerful, deadly nighttime tornadoes bulldozed a path of destruction across both states over the weekend. President Biden has issued a federal disaster declaration for the hardest hit areas, which are among the poorest regions in the country. Overall, an estimated 27 tornadoes were reported in 5 states, causing widespread damage and power outages. The biggest was a massive, rare EF4 tornado that stayed on the ground for more than an hour, destroying the town of Rolling Fork, Mississippi, overnight on Friday, killing at least 21 people. Rolling Fork Mayor Eldridge Walker says his city is reeling.
And what we're doing now is assessing all the damage around, along with the volunteers from various counties that are here helping us to locate folk who are trapped in their homes.
This tornado, aside from being on the ground for an hour, was anywhere from 60 to 170 miles on the ground from various reports. This was a big one, and it's disturbing to see the tornado belt moving so far south and to the east.
Yes, and we'll get to more of that in a moment. More severe weather is forecast for the area. As for climate change, data on tornadoes is simply insufficient to conclusively connect tornado frequency or severity to human-caused climate change. But climate scientists say that there is evidence that the warming atmosphere is causing shifts in tornado behavior and location. Abnormally warm ocean temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico are likely boosting tornado activity by increasing heat energy that fuels storms, and warming overnight temperatures are leading to an increase in deadly nighttime tornadoes. And, as Brad mentioned, geographically, Tornado Alley is shifting east, away from the Great Plains toward the southeast. California is bracing for another storm in that historic series of powerful storms that have triggered widespread flooding.
Another one?
Yes.
Really?
So much precipitation has hit the state that dry Tulare Lake, once the largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi, which was drained in the early 20th century by industrial agriculture, that lake has now reappeared, drowning thousands of acres of farmland. And that, in turn, is likely to trigger higher food prices later this year. And officials warn it's going to get worse. More flooding is certain, depending on how fast the state's near-record snowpack melts in coming weeks and months.
On the other hand, new lake.
It's the opposite situation in Somalia. A stunning new United Nations report estimates that 43,000 people may have died last year amid Somalia's longest drought on record, half of them likely children under 5 years old. Somalia and neighboring Ethiopia and Kenya are facing a 6th consecutive failed rainy season, while rising global food prices and the war in Ukraine complicate the hunger crisis. Globally, a new report by the United Nations warns that a quarter of the world's population lacks access to safe drinking water, and nearly half of the global population has no access to basic sanitation. 12 of the 15 most water-stressed countries in the world are located in the volatile Middle East and North Africa. The UN warns that without action, 60% of the world's population could face water supply issues by 2050, raising the specter of regional water wars.
What type of action could be carried out here?
Governments taking steps to deal with overconsumption, pollution, and water waste. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressed the findings at the UN Water Conference.
Water is a human right and a common development denominator to shape a better future. But water is in deep trouble.
I see what he did there.
But some good news. Global renewable energy capacity grew by 10% last year. That's a new record, according to the International Renewable Energy Agency. 83% of all new electricity capacity built in 2022 was from renewables. But the agency warns that renewable energy needs to grow by 3 times the current rate to successfully limit global warming.
Oh, I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. We'll take care of this any moment now. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Tennessee Representative Tim Burchett, again, as we talked about earlier, sorry, we can't do anything about shootings. We're just not going to fix it. But he had another interesting comment that I talked about yesterday. The Tennessee representative evidently told Newsmax that our foreign adversaries don't take us seriously anymore. And his rationale was because there are too many men in our military and our administration wearing dresses and doing crazy things. And look, I haven't been on a military base in a very long time, but I can't imagine there are too many people walking around in dresses. And here to share some thoughts on maybe I'm wrong. I've asked my good friend Rich Ojeda to come talk with us. He's a retired U.S. Army guy, a former West Virginia state senator, and host of Ojeda Live. Rich, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, anytime, brother, anytime. Make no mistake about it. They can get their asses whipped by somebody in a dress. I mean, it's that easy. I can assure you that they don't want this. I got it. You can sit and say, and it bothers me when I hear people say that we lost the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. We never lost the first fight. Every battle that we ever went into, we won. In the end, we did the right thing because we shouldn't have went to Iraq in the first place. That was wrong. It was right for President Obama to end that, and it was right for President Biden to get us out of Afghanistan. We could have done it better, but we had to follow a timeline that Donald Trump put into place. But make no mistake about it, our military is the most educated military on the face of the earth. We are the most lethal military on the face of the earth. And make no mistake about it, our military is very accepting of people, and that's the right thing to do. If a person wants to serve their country, they should have the right to serve their country. But make no mistake about it, if they serve this country, they are part of the most lethal fighting force on the face of the earth. And I'm telling you, I don't care who they are. Look, Ukraine is stomping Russia like a narc at a biker rally. I can assure you that if Ukraine can do this, if little old ladies throwing Molotov cocktails down the turrets of tanks, make no mistake about it. If the Ukrainian people are giving Russia this type of an ass whooping, the last thing in the world Russia wants is an ass whooping from us, because it'll be worse, guaranteed.
So no dresses is what I'm getting, though.
Nah, man, look, at the end of the day, it's not like that. It's not like that. And our military is absolutely intact. I was on Fort Bragg, North Carolina, just literally about 2 weeks ago, and I am always impressed at what I see. We're talking about fired up, motivated paratroopers. And make no mistake about it, when you see parachutes coming down in your neck of the woods, somebody's about to get an ass whooping.
Now, I find it interesting that, whenever there's a Democrat in the White House, Republicans are always, we've got the weakest military ever. Or am I reading this wrong? Because I get these comments from Republican representatives all the time that somehow now we're weaker, and I don't see it that way.
Well, some of them are weak. They never had the ability to pick up a rifle and man a post. They never had the guts to pick up a rifle and man a post. Somebody like Marge the Trainwreck Green wouldn't survive in the military because we don't do racism in the military. You learn really fast that it doesn't matter what color their skin, who they pray to, who they love. As long as they can handle their business to your left and your right, that's all you care about at the end of the day. So, they can talk all the garbage that they want to talk. But at the end of the day, our military is absolutely intact, and we are the most lethal fighting force on the planet. Make no mistake about it. Russia hasn't even made the attempt to even act like they're going to cross into Poland, because you know why? Because we're in Poland. We have soldiers in Poland, and they went there from the day that this started. And make no mistake about it, first and foremost, Russia can't handle Poland. It ain't like the old days where they could just march on in. Poland actually has a very military, and they're actually very well equipped and ready to handle business.
This Representative Burchett again caught my attention because today came out and said that basically we're not going to fix the problems of children being slaughtered in schools. Criminals. His statement was criminals are going to be criminals. We're not going to fix it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Understand that our kids don't go to school with their kids. Also know that Ogles guy is actually a representative for Nashville, and he's the one that lied just as much as George Santos did to get in office. And oh, by the way, if you go look at his page, he's got him and his family with their AR-15s in front of their Christmas tree because that's what the Republicans have to do. But make no mistake about it, they don't care about the security and safety of our public schools. They're cutting the programs, they're cutting the funding, so boards of education don't even have the ability to hire resource officers for public school. But make no mistake about it, their schools that their kids go to have metal detectors, and they have security every 20 feet. Because at the end of the day, they care about their kids. See, their kids are supposed to be the ones who inherit the leadership of this country, and our kids are the ones that are supposed to go to work for their kids, and that's exactly what it is. And they're not going to do anything to stand against guns in this country because they care more about a campaign contribution from the NRA than they care about the people. And make no mistake about it, it's not just about the campaign contribution that they get from the NRA. The NRA is an institution that also says that if you don't support us, we will spend shit tons of money going after your campaign.
This is one of those moments where it's all of that, and I think even more. I think this is, every one of these tragedies, every one of these school shootings benefits the Republican Party, benefits their agenda of destroying public education, of privatizing public education, of just creating chaos. And this is I hate saying this because I don't want to believe it, but it comes out time and time again. And this representative is just being honest. We're not going to do anything about it. They don't want to do anything about it.
Yeah, stop giving thoughts and prayers because that doesn't work. At the end of the day, and I'm going to tell you, even at the state level, when I was a state senator in West Virginia, we had the Citizens Defense League, and it was a big group of guys that literally, like I said, when they all got together, you had one full set of teeth and maybe a one high school diploma, But make no mistake about it, if you are not supportive of the NRA, these people will go after you. They will do everything in their power to smear you. They will lie on you. They will say anything and everything that they can. And make no mistake about it, the money that the NRA has, it scares politicians. And that's why we have a lot of politicians, especially on the Republican side. They know that if they don't do the bidding of the NRA, they're not just going to lose their race. They're not going to get any support from the other people because the Republicans will not be able to support them. Once the NRA puts you in their crosshairs, you're pretty much on your way out if you are a Republican. And that's an absolute fact. And that's why they will do nothing but say thoughts and prayers. Yeah. And that's all they're ever going to do. And until their children are targeted, it's never going to stop. And once again, remember, their children go to schools that have security. Their children go to schools that have metal detectors. Their children go to schools and they get taught about African-American history. They get taught about the Native Americans and indigenous people. Their kids get the education that every child should get. They just don't care if it's at public school. And what they've done to public education, I mean, like I said, they literally cut the funding for public education. So it literally basically makes it to where boards of education can't even hire resource officers. And that's a fact.
So let me ask you this, because you alluded to something here that I've had people say to me, throughout the years that, do you believe that it's just because it's poor and working class people and working people's children who are being slaughtered and not our elites? And maybe it'll take something, a tragedy in the upper ranks before anything gets done?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, like today, I shared a post and it basically said, what do these places have in common? And it was literally, there was at least 70 or 80 different names of schools. And what they had in common is school shootings. And it's just the way it is. I mean, I'm telling you, they are attacking education. They are going after the funding for public schools. They're creating charter schools. And I'm going to tell you, we've got people that are legislators in West Virginia that actually, once we passed charter schools, they went out and they bought the schools. I mean, it's free money, and that's all they care about.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, at the end of the day, they're never going to do anything because their children aren't the ones that are affected. Their children go to private schools that have security, and they spare no expense. It's our public schools that they don't care. And you know what? We had a mass shooting yesterday. 3 children died. 3 teachers died. And make no mistake about it. Watch, rinse, and repeat. There'll be another one in 2 or 3 days, and people are going to forget about the Christian school that got shot up. And there'll be another one after that. It's never going to stop.
Is this a moment where, I was reading a Washington Post article about, what an AR-15 round does to the human body, and the kind of carnage that it leaves, and the thing that they asked is it time now, maybe to make this stuff visible to the public so people actually see what these rounds do, and maybe ask the question: should we have these kind of things available to anyone? Someone can go out and buy 5 guns legally who has mental health problems, who's got the history of this shooter. Thoughts?
This is why the NRA has such a stranglehold on these people. I'm going to tell you that, what these assault rifles can do. I actually have here. Let me show you a quick something here. Let me see if I can find the other one because here it is. You see this?
Yep.
This right here, is your 223. You see this little tiny thing right here? This right here. This is the bullet that is far more dangerous than this bullet. This bullet will kill you. This bullet will blow a hole through you. It'll go in one end and go out the other. But this little guy right here will bounce off the bone structure. This guy right here it's smaller, but this is absolutely sinister. This bullet right here, I can shoot you in the shoulder and it'll come out your hip. It'll bounce off the bone structure. It will cripple you. It will absolutely destroy your insides. This bullet right here is meant to take out more than one person. This is a bullet that will shoot somebody and will put them in such excruciating pain that other people will stop what they're doing to try to take care of this guy. They will have to carry this guy. This is as sinister as it gets. And this is an assault rifle. This is an assault rifle. This is a 5.56 right here. This is what we take to combat, and make no mistake about it. This is absolutely devastating to the body. And I sit and I think, I spent years in combat zones. I know what it looks like for people to be shot and killed with 50 cal, with 7.62, with 5.56. And I can sit here and I can think about what that would do to a 7-year-old's body. The aftermath. We're talking about, not even being able to do an open casket. It's absolutely unacceptable. And then, we have people that want to do the right thing. We want to expand background checks. How about raise the age to 21 so that an 18-year-old can't go buy an assault rifle? They have to be 21. And what that would do is it would stop what happened in Uvalde, where a guy graduated from high school, purchased 2 assault rifles, and a week later went and killed 22 students and teachers. If that kid would have been made to have waited until he was 21 to get an assault rifle, that could have been stopped. We talk about magazines. We want to be able to say that you can no longer be able to purchase 30-round magazines. If it takes you 30 rounds to kill a deer, buy your meat, because you're obviously a horrible shot. And when you're hunting, it should be 1 shot, 1 kill. But they don't want to. They say that's infringing on their rights. No matter what we try to do to basically stop gun violence in this country, they're going to come back and say that we're stepping on people's rights. But what about the rights of people that want to have their children grow up and survive? Nobody's fighting for their rights.
Yep. Definitely
not the Republicans, not the far right. And there's even Democrats that play this garbage too. Look, I spent time in the military. Even in the military, when we're done, guess what our soldiers have to do? They have to turn their weapons in. If we draw weapons in the morning and we go to a range and we fire all day long, when we come back, We've got to turn our weapons in. We got to clean our weapons. We got to turn them in. We also have to turn in all the expended brass. And make no mistake about it. If there's a bullet count and they're not, they will keep people from going home until we get every single round, until we have all the brass that we use. I mean, the military does not play no games. And it amazes me how in the military we have standards. And we hold our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to those standards. But as far as the civilian world goes, you can't do that. We're not allowed to do any of that. And it's garbage. And people, every day, more and more people are losing their lives. The number one killer of children ages 0 to 19 is gun violence. Can we at least agree to protect our kids?
Yeah.
But people don't realize, I spent 4 years in the classroom, and there were kids that had problems. And we had it was a packet. It was called an IEP. And I can't remember what the IEP stands for. I'm sure teachers know what I'm talking about. But the thing about it is when a kid turns 18, those records are sealed. Those records show that we've got kids that have serious anger issues, who have home issues. And those are the kids that don't need to go buy a damn assault rifle when they turn 18. But make no mistake about it, they've set it up to where you aren't allowed to go in and find out if that kid had anger issues, because once they're 18, it's off limits.
No, an IEP is an individualized education program, and it's laying out people who do have some problems. But there's a lot of things that go along with this as well. But to tell me that there's nothing we can do, I'm sorry, I'm just not buying it.
I think it's horrible, and I think it's cowardice of all these people. You're going to sit here and make no mistake about it. Marge the Trainwreck Green has already started. She already said, because apparently the person who shot up the Christian school was actually in transition, is transgender. And you think to yourself, gee, as much hatred as we put towards people that are trans, it's only a matter of time before somebody finally got tired of it and decided they want to hurt. But at the end of the day, Marge the Trainwreck Green has already come out and said, oh, I'm sure it was probably some of the hormone therapy or something like that caused it. You're going to target one person that was trans that committed a horrific act, and you're going to overlook the last 1,500 people who've done it that were white.
And male. That's the other part of this. But I just cannot accept there's nothing we can do. But, Rich, as always, I appreciate you taking some time, sharing your expertise and knowledge. Hope folks will check out your show, Ojeda Live. Where can we get it at?
You can get it on YouTube. You can also get it on Facebook. I go live every night from 8:30 to 9, except on Saturdays. Saturdays I do 7:30 to 8 because 8 o'clock I'm on the Rick Smith Show.
There you go. Good stuff. Rich, appreciate the time, man. As always, good stuff.
Thanks, brother. Everyone.
Thanks so much, our good friend Rich Ojeda. Again, make sure you check out his show, Ojeda Live. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
As I said, I just can't accept that there's nothing we can do. Just flat out can't accept it. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line one. Alice, how we doing?
We're doing well.
What's on your mind?
Okay. What I wanted to say was you were talking about at the beginning of the show about the founding fathers, and you don't believe that they would have, accepted what is going on. And I'm going to back you up on that because, with all the revisionist history that's going on, we come up. First, we start off with going, oh, the founding fathers and the pilgrims and whatnot. So let's cut to the chase on that. The founding fathers were pilgrims. They were all about religious freedom and not about controlling others. The problem was, along come the Puritans right behind them, and they were the ones that took over and soon kicked out the Quakers and the Pilgrims. And then let's fast forward now to the Founding Fathers, and I know this because, not bragging here, but this is how I know, a lot of my relatives were involved with signing the Articles of Confederation and writing the preamble to the Constitution and whatnot. Most of the Founding Fathers were, to be blunt, snippy, snotty, and uppity. And in no way, shape, or form would they have wanted what they considered the lower classes to be involved in making all these decisions. And most of them were deists. They weren't puritanical Christians. In fact, when Thomas Jefferson ran for president, the holdout Puritan preachers were flipping out because he wasn't a Christian. So I'm here to say, if y'all think that the Founding Fathers would have put up with this, let everybody carry a gun and get away with nonsense, they're out of their pea-picking mind.
No, I may push back on this because just a little bit, just hear me, because we're killing each other. It's just poor people are shooting each other. No one's really going after them. Do you think they would have cared if the rabble were just killing each other? Because again, I go back to something someone said to me, we're the right people. This isn't the way to put this, but it's the wrong people who are dying right now before anything will get done. So do you think that the snippy aristocrats would have been okay with the rabble killing each other?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because when the rabble decided, and it occurred in my neck of the woods where I live, that whiskey rebellion, they were absolutely against it. And I have to agree with you that the problem is so far the evangelicals and the Republican base and the Republicans themselves, the hoity-toity of today, their children haven't been affected. So I'm going to agree with you on that. I believe that if someone would go into a bunch of evangelical schools and these Ivy League,
yeah, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop you there. That's going to get me into trouble.
Yeah,
I am not promoting. I am not promoting. I hear what you're saying.
Either.
I hear what you're saying. I don't want someone of diminished capacity to get an idea between their ears and us to be responsible for that. I couldn't live with it, but I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. And I was not going to promote violence. I was just going to, because I'm like you, I don't want anybody to get any ideas. But let's just say if somebody expanded their base, they're all of a sudden they would be passing all kind of laws.
Yep. No, I hear you. I appreciate the
but
thoughts.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Alice. No, she's not wrong. And this whole water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots stuff. I think she's right in a huge way. That that's nice rhetoric, unless it's them that's the blood being watered with. But interesting. That's a new way of thinking about it, because our founders were the landed gentry, if you will. They were the wealthy of the time. They were the most educated. I seriously don't think that they would have been, certainly would not have been in the, hey, there's nothing we can do category. Do you think, there's the question, there's the way to put this. Email me if you have a thought on this, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Do you think the founders would have gone the hopeless route? The helpless, we can't do anything? 9-year-olds are going to get slaughtered at school. Nothing we can do about it. Do you think? Rick, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1977. That was the day that members of AFSCME Local 1644 began their unsuccessful strike in Atlanta, Georgia. The union was made up of 1,300 mostly black sanitation workers. The city of Atlanta had elected its first black mayor, Maynard Jackson, in 1973. According to historian Manning Marabell, members of the sanitation union had campaigned aggressively to help Jackson become mayor. Many thought he would be sympathetic to the needs of working people in the city. The sanitation workers' hopes were disappointed when they received no raises for 3 consecutive years. Their average income was $7,500 annually. This put the workers below the city's poverty line. Since the Memphis sanitation workers' strike of 1968, AFSCME had emphasized organizing black workers in southern cities. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated while he was in Memphis supporting the strikers. As the nation mourned the death of the civil rights leader, the Memphis strikers had won their first contract. But the sanitation workers in Atlanta would not win their work action. On April 2nd, Mayor Jackson fired the striking workers. He aligned himself with what Manning Marabell has described as Atlanta's corporations, media, and the leaders of the Black Party's bourgeoisie. Some black leaders publicly criticized the workers for striking against the city's first black mayor, accusing them of undermining hard-won black political power. The city's black middle class, by and large, did not support the strike. After a month, the strike was effectively over. Workers returned to their jobs with no improvements in their wages, hours, or conditions. And the hard-learned lesson that what politicians say at election time is not always what they do once they get elected. Like what you hear? Check out laborhistoryin2.com.
It's always useful in a moment of national urgency to have level-headed experts explain what's happening. Experts like extremist right-wing politicos. For example, when 2 high-flying banks crashed this month, these screechers flocked to blame it all on their latest ideological bugaboo, wokeness. Their loopy contention is that everything bad in our country is happening because such institutions as schools, libraries, corporations, and even banks are responding to America's long history of systemic inequality by pursuing politically correct policies, promoting liberal values like fairness, equality, and diversity. Hello, oppression of the many by the few is in fact a reality in America. 2, pursuit of those liberal values is what makes America historically important. And banks? You're seriously asserting that high finance is now motivated by a liberal share-the-wealth mentality? Yes, indeed, squawk these self-proclaimed knowledgeable ones, singling out the recently failed Silicon Valley Bank. They were among the most woke banks, moaned a GOP lawmaker who specializes in conspiracy theories. Governor Ron DeSantis piled on, barking that this bank, they're so concerned with diversity and all kinds of stuff. Then Donald Trump offered his usual deep assessment, lecturing that the collapse is, quote, what happens when you push leftist woke ideology. Bovine excrement. As has now been documented, these banks were not woke, but greedy, incompetent, and reckless. Worse, our bank regulators had been intentionally put to sleep by a 2018 law that specifically let such banks escape careful public supervision. Guess what? Trump was the one who initiated this disastrous regulatory exemption. Ron DeSantis cheered and voted for it, and the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank led the lobbying campaign to ram it into law. This is Jim Hightower saying these politicos and profiteers crashed the bank, and now they're trying to put us to sleep with their hokey, anti-woke PR stunt.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you may remember after our Supreme Court decided, well, we're just going to kill off that Roe thing. Chief Justice balls and strikes. We believe in decided law. After they did that, a lot of the questions became, what are younger people going to do as they go off to college? Will this become an issue? Will they go to states that are draconian in the way that they treat women? And the most recent study come out that I've come across at this higher education website, this study from Art and Science Group, they found that nearly 1 in 4 high school seniors have ruled out institutions solely due to the politics, policies, and legal situations in the states. And I got to tell you, I got a quarter, 1 in 4. seems kind of low. And I got to think it's going to get much worse as these policies really come on the line. And here to share some thoughts on what this study says and maybe what we're going to see in the coming years, I've asked Drew Weston to come talk with us. Drew is a professor at the departments of psychology and psychiatry at Emory University. He's also the founder of Weston Strategies, their website, westonstrategies.com. Drew, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, it's great to be on.
So this study, very predictable, I think. I got to tell you, I think a quarter is low, and I think that's going to get much, much higher as these policies come on board. What do you think, and what are you seeing?
Well, I think your intuition turned out to be absolutely correct. I thought it was low too. So I went back and I looked at the data from the study. The sample was about just under 2,000 high school seniors, and over half were going to junior colleges or technical schools next year. So it turns out that of kids who are going on to four-year schools, it's probably closer to 40%.
Oh, wow. Because the reality is, and in the study it does say this, that most people stay close to home. That a lot of people don't, because of the out-of-state tuition costs are so crazy in a lot of places, that a lot of people stay home. So you're saying this quarter number that is the lead is actually much higher when you're talking about apples and apples.
Yeah, because when you think about it, I mean, when people go to two-year schools or technical schools, they're going to go near home. So given that 2/3 of the sample was those kids, then of those other kids, you're really looking at a much higher number. And that was, and even from even if you look at from the study as it was, 1/3 of kids who identified as liberal, 1/3 who identified as conservative, all said that they'd ruled out at least one school based on the politics of the state.
And predictably, we know, a liberal student is probably not going to the South, and more conservative students probably not going to California. I did find it interesting that they wouldn't go to New York, because New York's got some of the best schools in the country along with California. I found that interesting.
Yeah, well, conservatives have never been big on either going to those schools or letting the public know they have. Guys like DeSantis don't like to tell you he's Harvard, Yale, Stanford, whatever combination of alums he is. But no, the conservatives ruled out California and New York. Interestingly, it didn't look like they ruled out anywhere else. Versus the liberal students ruled out, as you said, all the old Confederate states, which are now once again not free states, just in a different way. And they also ruled out a lot of schools in the Midwest, in the more conservative states, where the legislature, particularly where the legislatures have been going crazy and way beyond their mandates.
So the breakdown then is, male, female. How does that play? Because I'm looking at states like Idaho and Utah, which are states in this study where they said more liberal students aren't going. Idaho has some of the worst, most restrictive anti-abortion laws. And in fact, they're moving on a piece of legislation as we speak to restrict people traveling across state lines. So we're going to be putting up borders for people and chasing them down. So it's not surprising. But is there a difference between male and female liberals, or is this just everybody going, I don't want to go to a place like that?
That's a really good question. They didn't report a lot on it, but they did say that the things they didn't report on, you didn't find much difference. And I actually found that pretty sensible, because the best data show that voters really ask two questions before they cast their ballots. One is, does this candidate or party understand and care about people like me? And the other is, do they share my values? And with both of those questions, gender actually doesn't matter as much as people have thought, even on Dobbs. One of the mistakes the Democrats have made in messaging Dobbs is they've spoken about it as if it's just a women's issue. Well, it is if you're an 18-year-old guy and you're deciding where to go to college, do you want to go to a school where you're the girl you met in chem class who you hooked up with can't get an abortion, or do you, and for that matter, do you want to go to a place where the people don't share your values, where it's not your culture? So it's really the impact of Dobbs is I think not only affecting men and women, but it's also is just really reinforcing to people the degree of a split we now have. And you think about what just happened in Nashville. I mean, if I'm thinking about where I want to raise my young family, would I dream of Tennessee now? No, I'd scratch it off the list. Why go to a state where people are walking around like the Wild West with toting their guns in public down the grocery stores?
And it's not just that. I mean, you look at Marjorie Trainwreck Green talks about a national divorce, and we're doing this to ourselves through our legislatures. I look at some of the policies coming out of places like Tennessee on child labor, on child brides, on all kinds of on education policy, all heading in a really negative direction on labor policy, especially in these no rights at work states that want to take us back to the days of Lochner, where if you're hungry and desperate enough to work for poverty wages, well, that's your liberty, it's your freedom. And I don't think we do enough to point that out. So I'm not surprised that people are going, I don't want to go to those states. I again come back to, I'm surprised it isn't worse.
Yeah, and when you add in things like young people, I've done a lot of message testing on messaging on unions, and 10 years ago, unions were at their bottom in public opinion. But you're now really seeing, we were starting to see then, and certainly are seeing now, that young people don't have the negative associations to unions that the Chamber of Commerce spent and Heritage spent tens of billions of dollars establishing in people's minds. So, it used to be as soon as you said union, you said, what's the first word that comes to mind? The average person would say boss, thug. I mean, it was wild in these focus groups, but you don't hear that so much now. And young people young people growing up now under the Biden administration, hearing a president who actively talks about good union jobs all the time, that makes all the difference in the world. Yeah, no. So, if I were a young person, I would think, where do I want to move? Union state, non-union state? I'd actually rather go to the place where I'm going to get paid twice as much and not die on the job.
See, you could sit in this chair and do my job, because that's exactly what I've been saying for all 18 years of doing this. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're Drew Weston. Drew is a professor at Emory University in the departments of psychology and psychiatry. He's also the founder of Weston Strategies. You can check out the work that he does, westonstrategies.com. But, I'm with you. I have great hope and faith in the younger generation, because they've watched their parents be ground down and beaten by corporate America. I see us coming out of this pandemic and a generation saying, we're not going backwards. So I see a lot of positive coming forward. And, look, I see them as my grandparents' generation, who went off and fought fascism overseas and came home and fought for the most prosperous working class in the history of civilization and did it together. So I have some great hope what the future is going to bring, even if right now we're struggling with some crazy folks around us.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And when you think about what young people are hearing now, there's actually another study that came out that got it, what young people are thinking about in Florida, about DeSantis's Florida. Young people do not like, the vast majority don't like the idea of right-wing politicians messing with what their professors can and can't teach them. Whether it's Florida, whether it's Oklahoma, whether it's Texas, whether it's whatever Republican governor now is going to follow DeSantis's lead. But that's the kind of stuff. We had loyalty oaths back in the that state schools tried to impose during the McCarthy era. There were professors who were principled who just quit, and no one wants to teach in that environment. Certainly, no one wants to be a student in that environment, especially if you're of this generation who have. They just at the same time that the average American sees less of the American dream than they've ever seen before. Yeah. We're looking at the first generation whose parents don't believe their kids are going to have a better life. You're also looking at a generation, like you say, who they don't see color the way we grew up seeing color. They don't see gender the way we grew up seeing gender. They're much more live and let live, and they like a living wage.
Yeah, no. Again, my belief on a lot of things, I don't care. I don't care, just as long as people have the opportunity to pursue their life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. The thing I grew up believing in as a child in school. But here's the weird thing, and maybe you'll agree or disagree. what I see coming out of my Republican friends is how we destroy education as a whole. Whether it's K through 12 and the privatization schemes that they keep throwing up, or what they've already done to higher education with all these for-profits and all these schemes of adjuncts and people who are cobbling together an existence by teaching at 4 or 5 different institutions, and nobody getting I don't believe getting the value that you got in the past. This is all by design, and they're just trying to trying to trickle down that higher ed model on the K through 12.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I can tell you, as a professor, when I started out as an assistant professor, the number of people who were adjuncts, the percent of professors who were adjuncts who were not tenured faculty or tenure track faculty, was under 5%. Now it's over 50%. And it's because they can exploit the hell out of those faculty. They don't give them tenure. They can toss them out when economic times get bad. They give them lousy salaries. They don't give them research time. It's a completely different model for what a professor is. And, we're treating professors the same way we've treated other non-unionized workers. And, it's whether you call it trickling up or trickling down to faculty, they're hitting some hard times for just the reasons you're talking about. It's all about making money as opposed to developing young people's minds.
Yeah, and here's the problem I have is we're in a moment right now where I would argue the efforts of the right wing to destroy education are front and center, because we've got the loudest people getting the most attention, we've got the most wrong people getting the most attention. And right now, Republicans are pushing this idea of parental rights, where one parent can shut down anything and all the other parents be damned. And I look at Florida. Michelangelo's David is now being called pornography by one parent, and they fire the superintendent or the guy who was in charge, and they ban everyone else from seeing it. 500 years David's been around. One parent gets it ripped out of the school. That's just mind-blowing to me.
Have any of these parents ever seen pictures from the Middle Ages of Jesus? I mean, he's not exactly well clothed. It is so crazy and it's so stupid. But you can pull this off now in a lot of these. Just like they call them right to work, they call it parents' choice. But this isn't about the choice of parents or parents' rights. Yeah. This is about the rights of a handful of parents to shut down education. And, we have to do a lot better job messaging this and not letting them grab a hold of something like Parents Matter or parents' rights, because we're actually the ones who are fighting for the parents' rights to have their kids get a good education and get a good education that's not interfered with by career hack politicians.
And they don't get murdered in school. This was my last question I wanted to ask you, because ultimately there's a lot of ground here for Democrats to do better in messaging. I mean, I look at the Iowa child labor bill that would give corporations immunity if children get hurt on the job, if they have an apprenticeship kind of program with a local school. So you can send your kids into the meatpacking plant, and if they get their arm ripped off, well, sorry. There's a lot of fertile ground for good messaging. What's the advice for Democrats?
The advice is start doing it. On things like critical race theory, we're always 2 steps behind. We wait until they come up with something, they work on the branding of it, and then they come out with. I remember watching this when Glenn Youngkin was running for governor of Virginia in 2021. I just moved to D.C. and watching these TV ads where he was saying parents matter, and what the subtext to that was. I'm a psychologist by background. What they were doing was they were unconsciously activating something else, which was, who else at that time had we heard mattered? It had been Black Lives for the last year. They made it parentheses, white parents matter versus Black Lives Matter, and he shot up in the polls. But it was it's our fault as well for not going straight at it. And for if Terry McAuliffe had been running against him and simply said, wait a minute, time out. You think I don't think that parents matter? Do you know how many parent-teacher conferences I went to when my kids were growing up? And that's what you should do if you don't like the books that are being taught in your kids' school. But if you think that you know more about books you haven't read than that teacher, how about the next time you need open heart surgery, you tell your surgeon, well, you know what? Keep me awake during this thing, because I want to tell you each step of the way which cut you ought to make and how you ought to stitch, because I know better than you, because, patients matter.
I saw it on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube. No, but the other thing that I love is, again, back to the schools and the books and everything. We want to give teachers guns, but they can't. No books. Books are bad. Any hope here? Do you have any hope that we're going to do this right, or is it just another example of Democrats are just never going to come around?
Well, I sure hope we are, and we have an opportunity now. We sure need to, because on all of these social issues, we too easily say, "Oh, that's not going to override the bread and butter issues." Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. There's no reason we should be losing on any of those things. I mean, I tested messages on critical race theory. If you end a message on critical race and you begin a message saying, we ought to be teaching history the same way we teach math and science, as accurately as we frickin' can. Yep. If you start that way and you end with something like, what do I want my kids to learn in school? I want them to learn to love their country. I want them to learn to love the truth. You can't love one without the other.
Yeah, the only thing I know about that theory about race is that it's critical. That's all I know. It's critical. So there's a theory. There's a theory out there, and it's critical, and we know it's about race, so it's got to be bad.
Yeah, you obviously read the guy who came up with it. He was right out there telling the New York Times or whoever who was interviewing him. He said that's why he called it that. He said, "Yeah, I'm going to take all these things, anything teaching about race, civil rights, the Civil War, and it's critical. Parentheses of America. It's just a theory, and it's all about race, and it's about blaming your 5-year-old and telling your 5-year-old in kindergarten that you're an oppressor and that you have." Your masculinity is toxic, but again, we don't help ourselves by using terms like white privilege when we're talking to white working class folks, because that's just sticking your finger in their eye. Because it's not terribly privileged these days to be a white working class person. It was a lot more privileged in the days when that was considered middle class, and you got good middle class jobs coming out of those jobs. But when you screw up those towns for years and you don't come back with replacement jobs, you don't build wind turbines there, you don't build the solar plants there, you don't build semiconductors like. Now we're starting to again, which is just great to make those in America. But if you don't do that and you tell people they're privileged, which was what we do, they're going to go over to the other side. And there's just no reason to make unforced errors like that.
No, where have you been? Where have you been? People need to start listening to Drew Weston. In fact, check out his website, westonstrategies.com. He's the founder of Weston Strategies. Make sure you get that. Drew, you got to come back and talk to us again down the road. Great stuff. Look forward to talking to you again.
I love chatting. Take care.
Thanks so much, Drew Weston. Again, no, he's spot on. Look, I mean, there are so many opportunities for Democrats to take this stuff on. If you just look at how ridiculous the language is. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1968. This is the day in Memphis, Tennessee, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s final march for civil rights. If you're a regular listener to Labor History in 2, last month you heard about how AFSCME sanitation workers in Memphis went on strike to win union recognition. They were protesting low wages and poor working conditions, but city officials refused to negotiate. Dr. King came to Memphis to support the effort. On March 18th, he gave a stirring speech to a packed church, calling for a ramp-up in community support of the strike. A march to City Hall was planned to bring more attention to the plight of the striking workers. Memphis city officials estimated that 22,000 students skipped school to take part in the march. Although organizers called for nonviolence, some of the young participants were fed up with the slow pace of civil rights in Memphis. Picket marchers at the end of the line began to use their signs to break store windows. The police crackdown was swift. A line of police in riot gear stretched across the street to meet the marchers. Fearing greater violence, King called off the demonstration and was quickly taken to a nearby hotel. Chaos erupted. Some stores were looted. Police met the crowd with tear gas, nightsticks, and gunfire that killed a 16-year-old boy. Police chased fleeing demonstrators back to a church and released tear gas inside the sanctuary. They clubbed people as they lay on the floor trying to get fresh air. Undeterred by the violence, Dr. King returned to Memphis the following week. It was there that he was murdered by an assassin's bullet, giving his life in the struggle for black sanitation workers to have dignity on the job and the right to bargain for a better life.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So I brought up Idaho. Again, this is one of those things where, where we started with Drew Weston was people, and I'm surprised it isn't higher, that, people who are looking to out of state to go to a place where they're going to go to school, the area not being as important now, as Drew pointed out, when you take out the VOTEC and the community college students, that number really goes up to 40% from 25%. That makes a lot more sense. But I look at what Idaho is doing. Already has some of the most extreme anti-abortion laws on the books. Already on the fringe of the fringe. Now what they want to do is they want to restrict interstate travel. And this is you go, what? The one thing you can say about this country is, we don't need papers to cross borders, and I'm wondering how they're going to enforce this, because they're going to stop abortion trafficking. So a minute ago, Drew said men. This is an issue for men too, and Democrats really should have reached out to men more often, because look, I'm an old white guy. I'm never going to have an abortion. Was never going to have one myself, but it's an important issue to me because I've got daughters. I don't want them to have to lead the kind of lives that their grandmothers and their great grandmothers had to lead. So this is an important issue. But if you look at what Idaho's talking about, if you have a friend who you drive across the border, it's you too. And this is one of those moments where you've got these people who, again, remember what they said. We just want to outlaw abortion. We're not going to do all the other draconian stuff. We're not going to go after contraception. We're not going to go after any of the other stuff. And immediately, what have they done? All of the insanity. Texas with their bounty hunter bill. This is a working class issue. I get this all the time from people. Wow, you're a union guy. You're a working class guy. Why do you care? Because this is a working class issue. Because the people who are going to be most harmed by this are going to be working class people. Those are the people who are going to die. The wealthy, they're going to be able to pay for plane fare. They're going to be able to go to another state. They're going to be able to go to another country if they have to. The wealthy, the well-heeled, the well-to-do are going to get what they need. They always do. It's the poor and the working class. It's my kids who are going to be the ones who have to suffer. So am I surprised that my kids' generation is going, we're not going to go to a place where our rights and our values and our being is not respected? No, not at all. But get ready to hear more about Idaho and other states doing this. We're cutting down on abortion trafficking. That's going to be the next bit of cutesy language that we hear from Republicans. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Something I said got under your skin. Definitely want to hear from you. Front of the line, as always. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Take it on the go wherever you go. You can get it anywhere where podcasts are found, from iHeart to Stitcher to Podbean and everywhere in between. Appreciate you tuning in. Look forward to seeing you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working